Hi, I'm Max Keiser, and this is the Keiser Report. You know, you've got to be real careful about who you let reincarnate. Stacy, tell us more.
Max, that's in our first headline here. China bans reincarnation without government permission. The law, which goes into effect next month and strictly stipulates the procedures by which one is to reincarnate, is, quote, an important move to institutionalize management of reincarnation.
Oh, the Dalai Lama, right. Now the Chinese government wants to control the cosmic reincarnation wheel to make sure that the Dalai Lama doesn't come back to somehow mention to the people that they might want a system other than capitalist slash communist slash totalitarianism slash American-style neoliberal market manipulation. JP Morgan sucks.
But it's also propaganda against the Dalai Lama, and the propaganda and manufacturing consensus is in all the rest of our headlines like this. And this is a headline from February 18th, Friday before the weekend in which Libya blew up. Don't pay attention to the gold bugs. So this is from David B. Armstrong, a CFA and a managing director and co-founder of a wealth management firm in Alexandria, Virginia. He says that if there is some sort of national or global crisis that plays out from some doom and gloom scenario, I am willing to bet that a box of Ritz crackers and a can of Cheese Whiz is going to be worth more than that ounce of gold coins in a drawer.
Well, this man is indoctrinated into the paper bug psychosis that's perpetrated by... yes?
Well, I don't think he's indoctrinated. I'm sure this man in Alexandria, Virginia is very well protected. He doesn't want you to protect himself. And he's saying your desk drawer, whatever you have in there, is not going to save you. But what if your desk, the whole building in which your desk resides has burned down? As we see from this headline, the Libyan central government building is on fire and oil and silver are surging.
Yeah, right. So he's wrong.
So he was wrong.
Yeah, of course.
But this is the sort of propaganda that we're seeing, this manufacturing of consensus, that only the Fed dictator, as we pointed out last week, only Ben Bernanke, only Hank Paulson, only Timothy Geithner, these are the men who can protect you from chaos and the disaster we ourselves have created.
And what do they use to protect you with? The dollar. It's a cult worshiping the dollar, as if the dollar was somehow more valuable than gold or silver. That's a cult. I mean, this guy is like that Hale-Bopp Comet cult guy who got everybody to get into a knapsack and drink the whatever, formaldehyde or Kool-Aid, and blow out to a comet orbiting. He's a psychopath.
But you can see across the board that most human beings, most citizens who watch the news and listen to their leaders believe that only the dollar is good and strong. And you see that, and we've covered this before. We've looked at comments in progressive blogs, for example, who like mock and laugh at people who talk about the gold standards, anything to protect you.
Don't mind me.
Have you just been reincarnated as a flea or something?
That guy should not be allowed to be reincarnated. That's my first comment, is that let's get the Chinese government on the phone right now, make sure this guy can be reincarnated, because he shouldn't be reincarnated, he's no good.
So, as we see, the Libyan central government building was on fire on Monday, and this follows the rambling, crazy speech by Saif Gaddafi, the son of Muammar Gaddafi.
Did you hear that? I was watching it on the web. The guy is, I didn't know they had methamphetamine labs in Libya, in Tripoli.
And now going back to this manufacturing consensus and propaganda, here's a headline just from a few months ago. Gaddafi's son to get WEF invitation. So this is Davos in January, just a few weeks ago, where he was invited, and the World Economic Forum was making a big point is we're going to invite this guy, and there were rumors that he wouldn't be invited. So in his speech, of course, he blamed drug addicts, the unemployed, union members, and illegal immigrants for the chaos in his country, which of course sounds very familiar to what you see in the US. Those are the same exact groups that are responsible for our economic disaster we see ourselves in. Not the elite, not the dictators of the world, not the oligarchs on behalf of all the guys who are up at Davos. Those aren't the ones. It's the drug addicts, the unemployed, and union members.
Right, we see this in Madison, Wisconsin. There's tens of thousands of people on the street trying for a regime change in Wisconsin, and the people who are the dictators in Wisconsin are trying to say, oh, it's the unemployed, the union members, the workers, the drug addicts. And it's the same global insurrection against banker occupation.
What we find out is they're actually telling each other, it's all the unemployed, the drug addicts, and the illegal immigrants that are causing all our problems. Well, another bit of propaganda that they themselves have believed in, that they've been perpetrating, so they're smoking their own belly button lint, as you say. Here's the headline. JP Morgan says Lehman called assets goat poo.
What? I'm sorry, I missed that. I thought you said Lehman called assets goat poo.
That is what I said.
Is that what you just said?
Yes, so Lehman Brothers and Barclays deceived JP Morgan Chase with bad assets that the failed investment bank's own employees dubbed toxic waste and goat poo, according to new court papers that escalate a legal battle between the financial firms.
A lot of people don't believe me when I say on this show that the banks, they just exchange cocktail napkins. They say they're worth $1 billion. They swap them. They charge each other a fee. And then when it comes out that there's nothing there, they go to the government for bailouts. They think we're joking about this. But clearly, the headlines prove exactly what we're saying. The banks themselves call the assets that they're swapping with each other goat poo. Okay, goat poo, let me tell you something. A pile of goat poo is not worth $1 billion. It's not worth $20 billion. Goat poo, even if you had all the goat poo ever pooed by every goat that's ever pooed goat poo, it wouldn't be worth the billions of dollars that these banks claim to have on their balance sheet. And the Federal Reserve claims it has on its balance sheet. The Federal Reserve Bank, Ben Bernanke. If you open up the vaults, what you would find is hot, steaming goat poo. That's all they've got at the bank. That's why the dollar is going to crash. That's why anyone who believes that the dollar is going to do better than the gold needs to be prevented from being reincarnated. Chinese government, step in and do your thing. Make your magic. Do your communist dictator thing. Don't let them reincarnate.
Now we're continuing on our theme of manufacturing consensus. And one of the guys in America, a politician who has been for the gold standard and honesty in government dealings with the population, has been Ron Paul. Now here's a headline regarding him. Fox News caught faking it. So let's look at this little clip of that Fox News presented as happening this year in 2011 at the CPAC convention, the Conservative Party Action Committee conference.
The winner of this year's CPAC straw poll is now the winner of this year's CPAC straw poll is Texas Congressman Ron Paul.
So as you see, they're saying that the audience booed for Ron Paul. And this is Fox News, fair and balanced Fox News. Now cut to this. As it really was, this is what the real response to the announcement that Ron Paul was the winner of the straw poll.
And the next slide, the winner of the straw poll this year, Congressman
So as you see, the audience was, in fact, cheering wildly for Ron Paul winning. But Fox News presented it as if they were booing. So what are they trying to do? But manufacture consensus to their audience watching this, that Ron Paul is somebody who you should boo at. He is somebody who you should mock and not consider seriously. Just like we started at the top of the show, that you should not take gold bugs seriously. You should not consider protecting yourself in any way.
That's right. Well, the audience of Fox News, they tend to be 70 years old, white guys sitting in lounge chairs at home drinking beer and cursing themselves and their pets. And they respond in a twitch-like manner. So whatever comes across out of the tube, they just twitch. And then that becomes the meme, the thought for the day, and they repeat it down at the bowling alley to their friends who are equally intoxicated. And then you have Bill O'Reilly come on and repeat the lie over and over again. And Roger Ailes, runs Fox News, I mean, why don't they make a remake of Triumph of the Will? You know, the famous propaganda film for Hitler. Because it's the worst propaganda we've seen in 60, 70 years. These guys should be arrested. The propaganda is illegal in America, and yet they're doing it without any regulation whatsoever.
Well, in fact, that's one level of propaganda where the leader tells you something, a lie, over and over and over. Then there's this more subtle level of propaganda going on where the audience, those people were booing Ron Paul. So there's this consensus that average Joes like you and me, not just Bill O'Reilly and Glenn Beck, the guys who are there presenting on television have an opinion about this, but normal people like you and me. So they're trying to create a consensus that the audience, the population like you believe this. And you see this frighteningly in this next headline. Revealed, Air Force ordered software to manage army of fake virtual people. So this is from Raw Story, and they found online on the U.S. government website that on June 22nd, 2010, a federal contract was offered from the 6th Contracting Squadron at MacDill Air Force Base, located south of Tampa, Florida, that solicited providers of persona management software.
Persona management.
In the description of this contract, they're saying they're looking for a software in which one individual at the Air Force can create 50 personas, like legitimate seeming personas who have a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and one of the things they could do is they would create a consensus that I am this persona and I have this opinion against these anti-war activists, for example.
Right. So they create fake personas to flood the web with fake comments to try to influence the perception and the discussion out there, as if there's some kind of debate when there is no debate. So it's similar to on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, high frequency trading or quote stuffing, where they flood the exchange with fake orders to try to make the price go up and down to manipulate prices. So this is manipulate the public consent or manufacturing consent by flooding the web with fake avatars and fake personas to leave comments that are coming from robots, not from actual people, to create the illusion that there is a debate.
Exactly, and we've often talked about the Plunge Protection Team, the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, where they're stepping into the market. The government is buying shares in order to form your opinion about where the markets are going. They're labeling basically AAA, your equities market, your Dow Jones, even though it's a whole load of goat poo.
Well, I think that about sums it up. Stacy Herbert, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report. I hope you'll be back in a reincarnated state someday.
Well, I'll reincarnate on the next episode. How about that?
That sounds fantastic. Don't go away. Much more coming your way. Much more on this topic with Glenn Greenwald. Hi, welcome back to the Keiser Report. Time now to go to Brazil and talk with Glenn Greenwald, a blogger at Salon.com. Welcome to the Keiser Report, Glenn Greenwald.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, Glenn, first, you are at the center of a massive and underreported WikiLeaks smear campaign. Tell us about it. Who are the players and what information has come out about their actions so far?
Sure. It centers around this group of hackers, though they might contest that term, that calls itself Anonymous. And they announced a couple of months ago that they would target any companies that in some way harmed or terminated its services with WikiLeaks. And there was a period in November of last year when a variety of large companies such as Amazon, PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa started succumbing to the pressure from the US government to terminate all services with WikiLeaks, prevent them from getting paid. And Anonymous targeted those companies with cyber attacks, denial of service attacks that slowed down their websites, in some cases took them offline for a couple of hours. And so this Anonymous group became a serious concern for the US government. And there's several internet security firms that are vying for large government contracts and to keep good relationships with the government who decided to target Anonymous. And one of them, a company called HB Gary that does internet security and internet investigations, started publicly boasting that they had managed to infiltrate Anonymous, find out the identity of some of their key members. And in response, Anonymous targeted this firm, HB Gary, by hacking into their computer system, into their email system, and downloading and then publishing on the internet 50,000 internal emails from HB Gary. And among those emails were proposals that HB Gary and other internet firms and a large law firm in Washington were developing to target various critics of the Chamber of Commerce and also supporters of WikiLeaks, such as myself, with all kinds of odious and probably illegal smear campaigns to destroy their reputation and in some way threaten their careers. And that's what it was, the publication of those emails and those proposals that have led to this controversy.
So WikiLeaks was talking about coming out with a huge cache of information relating to a bank, and that bank was rumored to be Bank of America. Bank of America then hires this group, H.B. Gary, to engage in some defensive cyber actions to protect Bank of America. And then they got into a kerfuffle with this group Anonymous, who are hacktivists, who are out there kind of trying to defend against overreaching corporate powers. And then in the melee, your name came up. So within the emails that were exposed, one of the tactics being used by this H.B. Gary was to just openly smear Glenn Greenwald, who has been out there defending WikiLeaks. That's what happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add a couple of things, which is, the Bank of America is very threatened by WikiLeaks because there have been reports that WikiLeaks is sitting on a large trove of documents that could expose serious fraud and wrongdoing at high levels of the Bank of America. That's what's been reported. And so the Bank of America is taking this very seriously and has hired some very large players, such as Booz Allen, which is staffed with all kinds of former CIA and Pentagon officials, to assist them not only in defending themselves against WikiLeaks, but in offensively targeting WikiLeaks. And so this effort was really part of that scheme, which was a scheme on the part of Bank of America using its law firm, its large law firm, Hunton & Williams, that was recommended to it by the Justice Department to target WikiLeaks and undermine and harm it in any way that they could. And so while there's no evidence yet that Bank of America actually hired these firms to go out and do this, that's what these proposals were designed to do, and they were being discussed with Bank of America's lawyers and several other internet security firms in emails over the course of several weeks, and nobody at any point ever said, this is something we shouldn't be doing, this is probably illegal, this is too excessive, I don't want to be a part of this. They all participated in the planning of it actively and enthusiastically, and there's zero objections from anybody of the numerous parties involved to any of these things.
Right now, Bank of America, of course, as the entire banking sector in the U.S., it's been exposed now and revealed they've been engaged in incredible fraud involved in mortgages and repackaging faulty mortgages and bogus selling of mortgage-backed securities, et cetera. And they've got incredible entree into the federal government. They've got this revolving door between Wall Street and the U.S. government. So here are some WikiLeaks pertaining to Bank of America. And this smear campaign is initiated. You'd have to go back to the McCarthy period, right, to find this level of persecution of American citizens to protect the corrupt. I mean, this is really historic in that sense. You're a lawyer, Glenn. I mean, this violates incredible number of laws here. Where is this going to end, and how can this stop?
Well, I think that if all this were just an effort to, for example, disseminate ideas on behalf of the Bank of America or even the Chamber of Commerce, or even to undermine the arguments being made by critics of the Chamber of Commerce or supporters of WikiLeaks, that would be one thing. That would be legitimate. But this goes so far beyond that. I mean, they're talking about, for example, fabricating documents, basically forging documents, and then submitting them to WikiLeaks, pretending to be a confidential source, to induce WikiLeaks to publish that, disseminate it to the public, and then attack WikiLeaks for having published forged documents. And the language that they use for targeting pro-WikiLeaks journalists, such as myself, was forcing people to choose between preservation of career over a cause, meaning finding ways to threaten the careers of pro-WikiLeaks activists and spokespeople and journalists in order to basically force them to stop advocating on behalf of WikiLeaks, which is extortion. And they talk about things like trespassing into WikiLeaks' cyber system to uncover the confidentiality of its sources. There's talk of the relatives and wives and children of critics of the Chamber of Commerce, where they go to synagogue, what they do online, targeting their family members. And, if this were just a one-time thing, you could sort of write it off to this being the byproduct of a bunch of psychopaths. But what I think warrants taking this story so seriously is that these are serious, legitimate players in this world of this consortium of corporate and government power. These are people who do a lot of work for the U.S. government, for large corporations. They're working with two of the largest corporate entities on the planet, which is the Bank of America and the Chamber of Commerce. And what's so striking about it is it isn't like there's a whistleblower who just blew the whistle on this because this was too extreme and they couldn't handle it. This is just a random hack of emails that uncovered this. And I think the behavior of the people involved, treating this like it's just business as usual, no one objecting, being willing to put it down in writing, shows just how routine this sort of thing is in that world. And that's what I think is so pernicious about it is this is clearly a systematic way of doing business on the part of entities like this that just accidentally got exposed.
Right, so this is industrial strength, assembly line, civil rights abuse by the government and the banks, and it's pernicious and widespread. Let me relate to you a story here from Raw Story. It's been revealed that Air Force ordered software to manage an army of fake virtual people. HB Gary is one of the companies that is bidding to provide this software. So this software provides online personas that can basically go into chat rooms and on blog sites and leave comments to try to manufacture consent, to use an old Noam Chomsky phrase. But they're using these virtual personas by the thousands and tens of thousands, the same company, HB Gary, to try to manufacturing consent as part of the propaganda. Your thoughts on this? If you've seen this, what do you think about this? Is there legal precedent for this? It sounds illegal to me.
I think that this has to be tied into the broader context, which is there's one of Obama's closest, longest-term associates, Cass Sunstein, who was formerly a law professor at the University of Chicago, who is now his chief regulatory officer in the White House, who published a paper in 2008 that talked about what he called cognitive infiltration of online communities. And he described how where people gather on the internet and reinforce one another's what he believes to be false perceptions of the world, false political views, mythical conceptions of things, that the government ought to coordinate efforts of people who work covertly to infiltrate these communities online and rebut these ideas through pretending to be part of this community, but in reality being paid informants or infiltrators on the part of the U.S. government. It's a very long and carefully considered law review article that even considered whether or not communities like this that traffic in what he believes to be false political ideas ought to be banned. And he said, though legitimate, it would probably be better to just rebut them and fight them using these kind of cognitive infiltrative teams. And that's exactly the sort of thing HB Gary is talking about as well. And other firms have been talking about this and doing it, which is basically using the internet in a concerted and coordinated way on behalf of the government to disseminate propaganda. And I think it would be naive and foolish to believe that, again, that this is something unusual that was exposed. There's lots of evidence that this takes place on the part of corporations all the time, that the internet can actually be a tool for more effectively allowing the dissemination of propaganda on behalf of the world's most powerful factions.
Right, they call it cognitive infiltration. The other word for that would be propaganda. So they're clearly breaking the law. So, okay, Glenn Greenwald, you're a lawyer. How does one begin the process to take these guys to court? They've broken the law. Let's prosecute and put them in jail because they're law breaking.
Well, propaganda is illegal when done by the government. And there's some indication here that the government was in some way involved in coordinating these efforts, although there's not very much evidence of that. Corporations have the same right to disseminate ideas, even unpersuasive ideas, as private citizens do. So I'm not so sure that there's criminality in terms of propaganda offenses. What I think is criminal is, as I said before, planning to manufacture forged documents with the intent to disseminate them to the public, threatening the careers of journalists in an extortionate way, certainly planning to trespass into WikiLeaks' cyber systems, targeting the family members of advocates and the like that interfere with their constitutional rights of free speech and free assembly. The problem is that the agency that would be responsible for commencing criminal investigations and prosecutions is the Justice Department. And the Justice Department has proven that they're very unwilling to target powerful entities when they get caught breaking the law. And in particular, the Justice Department is obsessed itself, as is the whole U.S. government, with destroying WikiLeaks. And so the idea that the Justice Department would ever prosecute any private entities like the Bank of America or Hunton & Williams for targeting WikiLeaks and its supporters is just inconceivable to me as a matter of reality.
All right, Glenn Greenwald, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Glenn Greenwald of Salon.com. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, this is Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.